Orthodox Christians do not define hell in as great of detail as the West tends to. The Council of Ferrara, Florence in the 15th century, which St. Mark of Ephesus attended, demonstrates this. St. Mark himself was strident on one particular issue, and that is that hellfire itself is uncreated, meaning it comes from God himself or from his energies. It is not created as an intermediary for God to purposely torture people for eternity. If we look at homily 27 of the ascetical homilies of St. Isaac the Syrian, he says something quite interesting. He says, sin, Gehenna, or hell, and death do not exist in God because they are effects, not substances. If we look at what an Orthodox understanding of hell is, it's something to the effect of this. God ceaselessly loves and longs for the salvation of everyone. But to those who hate him, they experience this love as hellfire. Because what is worse than someone you hate loving you? Is hell the absence of God? This is a phrase that many evangelicals may have grown up hearing, and is based on the passage in Scripture, 2 Thessalonians 1:9, where it says that those who suffer eternal torment will do so away from the presence of the Lord. Now, as Orthodox Christians, we understand that God is everywhere present and fills all things, something that David pointed to in the Psalms when he said, "If I ascend to the heavens, you are there. If I make my bed in hell," or Sheol, Hades, "you are there also." How do we reconcile these different scriptural passages? Well, first of all, we don't need to focus on reconciling these passages. Scripture often speaks in parallels that seem to be at odds with one another because they are trying to describe an incomprehensible reality. And this is very much the same. God is everywhere present. His presence is enjoyed by those who have molded their lives according to his commandments, and those that have not experienced it as hell. What will the resurrected body be like? Well, it'll be incorruptible, immortal, and it will share in the glory of the soul. It will also be freed from natural necessity. This is a technical term to refer to anything that requires constant effort for us to stay alive, like eating, breathing, drinking, going to the restroom, and so forth. But will there be men and women in heaven? St. Augustine and St. Jerome, together with St. Athenagoras and many others, say absolutely yes, but we will be made like the angels insofar as we will not marry and our sexual organs will not function in the same way that they do here. I have an entire book about this, which you can buy. I'll link it somewhere. But if you want to know more about that, definitely check that out. Yes, it will be a physical body. Christ himself still has a physical body via the resurrection and the ascension. We read in 1 Corinthians that it will be a spiritual body. He just means insofar as we are freed from natural necessity, it will take on a certain lightness. What age will people be in heaven? Well, the scriptures and the church fathers don't specifically give us an answer. What we do see is that while the body is sown in corruption due to the fall, it will be raised in incorruption, and largely this is the theme that we see throughout Scripture and the writings of the Church Fathers. Understanding that time and age and ultimately corruption is something that will not be present in heaven, we can surmise that this question really doesn't have an answer. Some have theorized that people will be 30 or 33 around the time Christ was when he began his ministry or died on the cross, but I don't feel comfortable ascribing to this theory, mainly because of the aforementioned reasons. And ultimately, in the Orthodox Church, there is no dogma that talks about this. It's just a question that people have frequently, actually. Is it permissible in Eastern Orthodoxy to hold to Universalism such as David Bentley Hart? There's a great passage in Callistos' Ware book called The Inner Kingdom, where he says we cannot preach universalism, but we can cautiously hope for it. Now, you will get people talking about Origenism and St. Gregory of Nyssa's version of epikatastasis, which is the restoration of all things, and Universalism is typically a part of this, and how, in particular, the Fifth Ecumenical Council might not have condemned universalism proper, but the Platonic elements in Origen's theology. Now, there are a ton of arguments for and a ton of arguments against the place of universal salvation in Orthodox theology, and you can really kind of get drawn into the weeds on this one, and insofar as it keeps you from things like personal prayer and actually praying for those in the world,